Hey everyone, welcome to a special edition of 10 for the Chairman. As you all know, Chris has been busy in the UK on the performance and motion capture shoot for Squadron 42, and he is now back home in Santa Monica. Since so much time has passed since the last episode of 10 for the Chairman, we thought we'd do something special this time. I've pulled some of the questions and concerns and issues the community has had during his absence, and we're going to run through those in sort of a Ben for the Chairman this time around. And just have a chat about what's going on with Star Citizen. So first of all, Chris, welcome home.
Thank you. It's good to be back. It was a lot of fun over in the UK, shooting the motion performance capture for Squadron 42, but it's also really nice to be back home and back here in the LA office and seeing the energy of everyone, because we're all working pretty hard on a bunch of things right now, which I think we'll talk about. But yeah, no, it's nice to be back. I mean, I captured a lot of really great stuff, and now it's all a matter of getting it in and seeing it all come together, which is some of my favorite time on any project.
Well, we are certainly happy to have you home, but we know you've been doing some incredible work. Tell me before we get started with community questions, tell me what it was like working on the motion capture shoot.
Or performance capture.
Capture.
It was pretty awesome. So I mean, we on this one we're doing something very different. I mean, the past Wing Commanders, when I directed it, we did live action. Wing Commander 3 was actors against green screen, and we built the sort of digital backgrounds for him. Wing Commander 4, we did a lot more real sets. We shot it on film. It was a much bigger production. It was almost like shooting a small film or a sort of big TV show or something. But technology has changed so much now that the fidelity of the characters and the scenes and how it will feel when you're inside it, it's much more lifelike. So there's a real opportunity to sort of put you inside the film, so to speak, in a way that you didn't. So in the past, in Wing Commander 3 and Wing Commander 4, you were Colonel Christopher Blair when you were flying a ship, and it was your point of view. But when you came back to the ship between the missions, you would sort of click between a couple of locations, and then there would be people, in the bar or in the pilot's quarters, and you would click on them, and then there would be a conversation that would play out from the point of view of third person, and it would be Mark Hamill, who is playing Colonel Christopher Blair, and then whoever the character you were talking to. And so it's sort of a combination of you were the star of the movie, but you were also watching a movie play out. And in some ways it was slightly disconnecting, but at the time it was the best way to really deliver the emotion and sort of the subtlety of storytelling for the technology then. But now you could do something wholly different. So what I decided to do quite a while ago, and we ran quite a few sort of tests early on, is we're doing what's called performance capture. So it's a step up beyond motion capture. So motion capture is really just the body. So if you see, the Uncharted stuff, which is great, or The Last of Us, they do motion capture, and the actors say their lines, and they sort of act it out. But the actual faces and animation, those are actually sort of crafted art assets, and they sort of hand animate the faces and what you can do with some of the most recent technology is we can get the entire performance from an actor transcribed into the 3D world. So for the Squadron 42 shoot, we did full performance capture. We shot for a lot of days. We had a 66-day shoot, which is longer than any of the films I've done, of which 53 days of those were the specific performance capture with multiple actors in the scene, acting out the scene, and they had the full suit on, and they had a head rig, and there was 3 cameras capturing every single expression, motion on their face, and 50 cameras in the volume capturing all their motions. And so there's a lot in a movie or a TV show that you get from non-verbal communication, or just in general life. When someone looks at you, or they roll their eyes, or they smile. I mean, you can tell a lot whether someone's happy with what they're hearing, or not happy with what they're hearing, or they believe it, they don't believe it. And it's those details and subtleties that make film and TV feel very real, and I feel now that we can transcribe that and bring that into a game for you as a first-person experience. And so, we put this amazing cast together, as good as any of the movies I've done. World-class actors, and we scanned them. Like, we had a rig that took 50 cameras, completely digitally scanned their heads. We mapped all their sort of facial contortions and motions, and then the performance gets transcribed that we've recorded that I was directing over in the UK into a full performance in 3D in the game. So it should feel like instead of you watching a movie, you're in it and you're walking right up to these characters that are played by people you would know. I mean, it should be immersive in a way that I haven't managed to do before in Wing Commander. I'm super excited by it. It's going to be pretty awesome. We're working on a lot of like really cool tech, and it's also going to show off some of the other stuff that we're going to have in the game in general, in terms of the scope and the scale, the ability to fluidly go from walking around an environment, getting into a ship, flying around, flying a large distance, landing in another environment, getting out, walking around. There won't be any sort of artificial barrier between the flying around missions or moving around the ship that you're based on, talking to people. It will completely be fluid. Action can happen at any one of those points. So it should just feel like you're in this huge space epic. And so I'm super excited to pull all that together and have people experience it, because we're able to do it at a level that I never could have done when we first started this crowdfunding campaign, because of how much everyone's backed this game for. So we're truly competing with the biggest sort of AAA kind of action adventure games out there for just Squadron 42, and that's not talking about the persistent universe that obviously is coming along the line as well.
Well, this is really exciting. I mean, one of the things that always drew me to Wing Commander was the idea that you kind of took all these techniques and concepts from film and you brought them into the game world as best you can, and now it sounds like you're doing motion capture more like Lord of the Rings or Planet of the Apes.
Oh, definitely. Well, we were doing it with Imaginarium in the UK, and that's Andy Serkis's company, who played Gollum and played Caesar in the most recent two Apes movies, and they're very focused on the performance aspect, obviously, because Andy's a really great actor, and so there's a lot of techniques and technology. They've been working for that, and we've been working with them and some other companies that are building technology to do that, because the goal with Squadron 42 is to really sort of deliver emotion in a story in a way that maybe you haven't had the opportunity to in a game in the past. So we're letting the player sort of wander around. Say when he gets transferred onto a ship, he can, one of the reasons why it took so long to shoot is, our script, I think, was about 600 pages long, which is longer than we did for Wing Commander 4 by quite a bit, longer than we did for Wing Commander 3 by a lot more. And one of the reasons is because as opposed to a film where you know exactly where your main character is going to go, in this particular case, you don't know where the players, because we're giving, probably 90% of the performance capture scenes we captured are not cinematic driven, they're completely player driven. So we don't know where the player's going to be in the scene, where he's going to enter in the scene. And that provides some tricky technical challenges that we're solving. But the thing that's great about that is it allows the player to move around, say, the ship that he's based on, and interact with various crew members and sort of decide what relationships he sort of fosters and which ones he doesn't. And the goal of that is when stuff happens later on in the game and the story, and say people die, if it's someone that you were spending time getting to know, hear their personal story, all the rest of that stuff, and they die, it should be a lot more affecting than it would normally be, because you actually invested your own time doing it. And so because of that, as opposed to a normal movie, we have a whole bunch of secondary characters that are on the ship, various, and they've got great personalities and they've got great backstories, and a lot of it doesn't necessarily always have something to do with the main plot of the story, but it is to sort of let you go and talk to them and engage in relationships, and therefore when things happen, as they inevitably do in single-player stories, because you need to have some drama. There will be a real sense of emotion if someone gets killed or someone gets wronged, and I'm really hoping that will transcribe itself to a better experience than before. So instead of sort of telling you the way you want to feel, I want you to sort of inherently feel it. And so we're using the technology to deliver emotion in a game in a way that I know other people are trying to do this too, but I mean I'm big on that, because I think movies and TV too are an emotional medium. It's about how you feel when you watch people and what's happening, and so that's something that games could do better on, and that's one of the big goals of Squadron 42.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we kind of sometimes don't get across with Squadron 42 is what a big deal it is. People see it as sort of like, oh, it's an extra we got when we played. This is a full AAA game. This is an amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely there because of what everyone's backed. I mean, I think that it's quite easy to say, well, you promised we'd get Squadron 42, but the Squadron 42 we were originally talking about when we started the crowdfunding campaign. I didn't think we would raise the kind of money that we've raised, so it was going to be much more closer to, say, Wing Commander in terms of how it would work. And here we're able to sort of push it. We're able to have more fidelity in the capture. We're able to invest a bit more in the technology to make it more immersive. And ultimately, I think when someone, at the end of the day, I mean, it's tough sort of having the patience to wait for all this, but at the end of the day, my goal is that most backers will say, oh, you know what, I pledged my $40 or I pledged my $60, even I pledged my $250, and they'll say, this was awesome. I was playing various parts of the game along the way. I had this amazing, Squadron 42 experience, which was as good as any $60 AAA, sort of console game I could play, and I have this whole persistent universe I can adventure around in. I really feel strongly that we're sort of delivering multiple AAA games all rolled into one. It's one of the reasons why things are taking as long as they are, because we're building this huge game, and that's made possible by everyone's contributions. So thank you very much. I mean, you basically said, build a huge thing, and then that's what we're doing. But I think people are really going to like it, because at the end of the day, it's, there's a lot of people that backed on Star Citizen that still remember Wing Commander or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And those games are 20 years ago. So that's spent the sort of the test of time. It survived the test of time, and it's because at the time it was going for it, and that's pretty much what I've always tried to do. I think that's why people sort of enthusiastically back Star Citizen Squadron 42, is that we're going for it. We're not trying to do something that's you've seen, I'm just doing a rehashed version of Wing Commander. I'm trying to take it to the next level, as I would have been doing if I was doing a Wing Commander, and I had plenty of funding and backing from a big publisher. So I'm super excited for it, and then a lot of the things we're developing for Squadron 42 obviously come right across into the persistent universe. So we've got a whole sort of conversation system that's based in first person, that's very fluid, and will be awesome for the persistent universe, because we'll be able to sort of put a whole bunch of it's like an adventure game mixed with a space game mixed with a first person combat game. I mean, it's going to be cool.
Well, Wing Commander is certainly why I'm here. Before we get to the questions, one more clarification for folks who aren't familiar with this process. What is the length of an average Hollywood movie script?
Okay, so normally the length of a script is somewhere between 100 and 120 pages. So the general rule of thumb in movie scripts is about a page a minute. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's a movie with a lot more action, then it can take longer. So, that would be most of Michael Bay's movies, because there's a lot of slow motion, a lot of blowing up. Because basically, action's denser than dialogue. If you have 1 page of dialogue, usually that's about a minute of screen time. Our script was 5 times longer than a typical movie script. Now, of course, and you have to remember that we're really just filming sort of the conversational pieces, because a lot of the action is part of the game that we're building. So we're really building a massive epic and experience, and we're planning to sort of do that. We have a whole sort of trilogy set up for the storyline that we think is going to be a really great journey that will keep people amused and entertained for quite a few years. And then we'll also be telling other stories inside the Star Citizen universe using these tools, as well as letting people create their own stories, adventuring around the persistent universe. So I think, if you're a single player fan, you're going to be happy, and also if you're a multiplayer fan, you're going to be happy. There you go.
This trilogy you mentioned, that's another one I think people have questions about. It's not one game and then some DLC. It's like you're imagining Wing Commander 1, Wing Commander 2, Wing Commander 3 all at once. So,
yes, that's one of the reasons why. Originally we came up with a storyline, and we sort of looked at it and said, for telling a story at the fidelity that we're telling it, because we're telling it at a level of detail that I've not told a story via a game before, because we're going for this, all the details, warts and all that you would do, say, in a movie. And if you think about movies succeed the best when they sort of deal with short moments in time. Die Hard, it's one evening in a skyscraper that the terrorists or the criminals take over, and John McClane manages to thwart them. It's not John McClane's life over 5 years or 10 years. Mm-hmm. And generally, if you think about movies, that's normally what happens around sort of certain events in time, because then you can sort of tell it with detail. That's what movies are very good at. Novels are better at sort of telling longer, more epic stories. And so, in the case of the detail that we're doing, it was quite clear that from the scope of the story we wanted to do, which is incredibly epic, that we would never be able to do it inside any kind of reasonable time. And the other issue is just people want to play Squadron 42. So we looked at it and said, really, this is like full, this is 3 full, massive, standalone AAA titles. So we sort of set things up and said, okay, this is the big story arc, and then it sort of has the 3 episodes, which is sort of think of it like episode. I'm not going to say 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars. I'll say 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars. And it allows us to really give the time on those. And each one's going to be, it's not going to be one of those sort of 5 to 6 hour play the single player games that you get in a lot of sort of AAA sort of shooters. It's I would say at least a 20-hour experience. I mean, if you think about the 500 or 600 pages we've shot, that in itself is about 5 to 6 hours of talking and characters. So then you've got action, and then it depends on what you're doing. So, I mean, obviously there are different playthrough paths. So if you decide to talk to everyone and do everything, it'll be quite a long game experience. I'm sure there will be those, see it on the YouTube, Twitch, sprint run-throughs that you can do on all games. But in general, if you're into it and into the world, it will be a pretty meaty experience.
And one of the most fun things with the original Wing Commander is going back and I think you can play through it in like 14 missions, but there's 47 in there. So it's the other paths and the other conversations.
Yeah,
really cool.
And we're doing that. So then there's definitely that case. It's about the characters that you decide to interact with, and so it felt really, really good when I was shooting it. Normally when I'm making things, I get a feeling of whether it's going to work or not work. And I can sort of visualize. It's for as long as I've done it, all the way back to Wing Commander. That's just kind of how I've been, the way I sort of inherently sort of feel something. And this felt like it's going to. If it comes together the way I sort of see it, I think it's really going to be. It'll be great. So it's definitely worth. Maybe taking a little longer than we originally thought, but it's much bigger and more ambitious in scope, and I think it's really going to be worth it. And people, at the end of the day, it's it's whether something's good. It's the there's that famous quote, which is about the fact that a delayed game is eventually good and a rushed one is forever bad. And I'm not saying that we're necessarily in that category, but the idea behind it is that at the end of the day, it's about what you're going to play, and you want to play something that's great. And so for me, I don't want to make something that isn't great. And I think in the past, that's what's made my games, be fairly popular and successful. And we're definitely doing that on Squadron 42 and on Star Citizen, and that's because of everyone's support out there. So thank you guys.
And that's the whole hope behind crowdfunding, is it lets us do that rather than sticking to some schedule from a publisher. It's
totally. If this was a publisher, it'd be like, okay, push it out the door, cut this. I don't care if that compromises this overall vision and all the rest of the stuff. It would be out there, and you sort of see this. You see this all the time, where whenever you've got titles that are sort of on their annual, Assassin's Creed was really great in the first few titles, and then as soon as Ubisoft realized it was sort of this big franchise for them, it was like every year there's an Assassin's Creed, and in some cases the pressure to get it out is more than the time needed to make it right. And things like Arkham Knight, which is consoles getting great reviews. On the PC, it's just not really wasn't done right and finished out and had lots of issues. It should have had a bit more time to get it right. And so for us, we're not looking at we got to make the holiday window and get it into Best Buy or something like that. We're saying, we've got you guys, and you have entrusted us with this money. You want the best game possible. And we will give you that. And in the meantime, we're sharing parts of the game as we're building it, like Star Citizen, like the Arena Commander module, Star Marine that'll be coming up soon, allowing people to sort of see parts of it as we're building it, so they don't have to wait forever, but then allowing us to sort of take the time for certain things. And Squadron 42 is a key one of these, because that's a narrative story game. So some of the other aspects, so the persistent universe, the dogfighting, some of the first-person stuff we can share early and get feedback and balance it. But you obviously don't want to do that on a narrative story, because you don't want to ruin the sort of experience and the journey you're going to take. Look, it's a lot of work. There's the more people you get, the more feedback you get. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't do it any different. I don't think that we would have been able to build Star Citizen or get Squadron 42, in the direction and shooting for the ambition it does any other way than the way we've been doing it.
All right, let's get into the big community questions.
Okay.
First of all, Star Marine, what is the status right now? What are we doing?
Well, we're hard at work on Star Marine, so the folks in Denver, Phonic, are working round the clock on it. We've also got a fair number of people in all our other studios. So here in LA, there's quite a few people working on it. I mean, Steve Bender, who's our director of animation, is full time on that. We've got Forrest, who's sort of our LA art director here, that's pushing forward the characters and a bunch of other stuff on it. I actually have some code up on my screen that I'm dealing with. And John Riggs, who's our rigger, and then in Austin, the animation department there, plus a bunch of other people like Sean Tracy, Jason Hutchinson, are all focusing on it. And in Frankfurt, Germany, we've got a fair number of people working on it too. And the Frankfurt office is an office that's staffed with a whole bunch of Crytek veterans that know the engine really well. So we've sort of brought them in to help get us through the last sort of parts of there's some. CryEngine is incredibly powerful, but it's also very dense and very complicated, and so there's a lot of sort of tribal knowledge that comes with it that isn't necessarily easily available. And so having the people that built the systems, like we have the engineer that created CryAnimation, and so that's a pretty good resource to have. Todd Pappy, who's our design director, is the lead design on the FPS, and he's got a bunch of his designers supporting him, and in the UK is supporting him. All audio is done in the UK. All the animators in the UK are all working on it. Various programmers and some of the designers and technical designers are working on it. So we've got a fair number of the UK office came from Crytek UK that also have experience with the engine. So we've sort of ramped up the resources on it to try and sort of finish out the more difficult aspects of closing this out, because we're sort of faced with there's a couple of things that we're trying to close out. One is the backwork networking stuff, which I think you're always going to hear, because networking is just a bitch no matter whether it's on our game or anyone else's game. And anytime you talk to anyone else in the industry, they'll share their woes about all the various challenges of getting multiplayer games working, all the rest of stuff. So we talked about that, and there is aspects of that in terms of making sure that it can work. So we're going for I think 32 players in the Astro Arena sort of mode, and at least 16 in the Gold Horizon level, and ultimately we want to push beyond there. So we're working on that, and then the other really big thing is the animations, and so the real sort of challenge on the animation, and I just did an interview about this with Steve Burke at Gamers Nexus, just earlier. But the challenge on the animation is that we share first. We basically most FPS games have a first-person mode and a third-person mode. In the first-person mode, it's essentially a floating camera. You're basically a hover tank or a wheelchair zipping around, where your arms are attached to your ears and your gun's right out in front of you, and it's not actually physically realistic or correct, but in most cases it's okay in an FPS game, because you don't go out to see your character in third person. And then usually in an FPS game, you're either fighting AI that have completely different sort of motion sets that don't have to combine with what you do. So that allows something like Call of Duty to have all these like really beautiful like first person open things up and animations, and feels like a roller coaster ride. And you also see the other characters, the NPCs that you're fighting, move around. But that's also why in something like Call of Duty, when you get into the multiplayer mode, you'll notice that the other players moving around sort of skip around, and they don't nearly have as fluid animations as the AI do. And that's partly because the sort of player animation doesn't really translate to what you let someone do in first person. It lets someone to just sort of like instantly go left, instantly go right, instantly go forward or back. Whereas in real life, there is a certain amount of like biomechanics and inertia that you have that don't allow you to be quite sort of hover tanky. And we have a real issue, because in Star Citizen, it's not really just, if we were just doing an FPS and that was it, then we could probably go with the split between first person and third person. But really, the first person is the foundation for everything, because the whole game takes place in first person. When you fly a ship, you move your first person character, get into the cockpit, and then you start operating your first person character, who is then operating the ship. And the same is down on the persistent universe. And because we have a multiplayer game, and we're going to have multi-crew, say, ships and all the rest of the stuff, we are definitely going to have places where we need to have player-controlled characters interacting with their environments that you will see. So irrelevant of whether you pop out to see the third person view yourself, you are going to see other players sitting down in cockpits and using things or interacting with tables or ducking behind cover and all this sort of stuff, which means that unless we want sort of the world to seem very fake and people sort of glide around a lot like you see on sort of fast-paced FPS multiplayer games, we have to do something that essentially unifies. We can't cheat anymore. We have to have the body be in the right position. We can't put the hands up here, or we have to look down and see the body. And so we have to unify first and third person together. So we just basically, so if you can get it all to work, it does make your life simpler. Basically you just put the camera where your eyes are. You've got to do all sorts of kind of tricks. So we do things like we do eye stabilization. So if I'm running in real life, my head's moving up and down, but my view is sort of focused here, and this because my brain is sort of stabilizing that image. And if I go sideways, this is still up for me. So we sort of built in that kind of logic, and then we also have to play with the transitions, the animations. So we have the fluid, like if I'm running, if I'm moving fast, it's like if I animation director loves to do this all the time. But like if I'm here and I'm going here sideways, and I got to come back onto a leg, that's what you actually really do. Like you can't shoot from here because you'd go like that. So you've got to step back to here. So there's all these things about where your feet are and moving around, and all those you can normally do for AI characters, and that's fine. But for player characters, it's difficult. But you have to build that in. So the combination we have to have is the responsiveness of the animation. And the fluidity of the animation, but not sort of hampering too much of the player experience. And that's really been one of the big challenges, is sort of making that balance. And so we're still finessing that. We're still working on that. And that's actually one of the reasons why the FPS has been delayed, is because that's one of those things that you can't really say, oh, this is going to take 1 week to do, because it's very much about feel. So you sort of play and experiment, and because it's the foundation, we think it's very worth it to spend the time doing it. And it's also one of those things, because it's about basic motion, we don't want to put it out there where if it feels unresponsive or sluggish or kind of annoying, or there's glitches in the motion transitions. Yes, sure, it's an alpha. Yes, sure, that's the case, but it's going to inherently hurt the feeling of how FPS feels moving around, shooting. And so that's what we're working on. I feel pretty good about it. We're making really good progress. It is something that I'm hoping that we will have for people to at least play around with on the PTU sometime around Gamescom or after Gamescom. Don't hold me to that, because that's what happens. And then a few weeks after that, we'd probably go live. But it's definitely, the FPS has been hard at work. We're working really hard on. I think it will be a great foundation when it's all done. It's certainly not indefinitely delayed. It's certainly not cancelled or put on hold. We've got more people working on it now than we ever had. And it's because it is a sort of core foundational thing. And that's why we're doing these weekly updates where you can sort of see kind of the issues that we're working on. I know it's frustrating that it's taking longer. It's frustrating for us that it's taking longer than we want it to be. Trust me, there's no one here that goes, no, let's just wait back and let's let them sweat a bit more before we give it. We want it out as soon as possible. But, at some level, you've got to sort of make decisions and say, well, we're not happy with how this feels just yet. So, in some ways, it's like even on our QA side, I'm like, QA are going to have issues with the movement control as this. And then I'm going to go, well, the backers will have issues. So we want to fix those, make sure it goes, and then share it for you for feedback. And I'm sure we give it out. It still will have lots of issues. It will still need lots of polish. But I think at that point, it will be a more constructive basis to do a larger sort of sampling and all you guys experiencing it. And you can give us feedback, and I'm sure you'll break it in ways that we never imagined. I'm sure you'll do really cool stuff that we've never imagined. So that's where it is. So we're hard at work on it. We're working really hard. I think it's going to be something that is foundational for the rest of the game, and that's why it's worth taking some of the time on it. And hopefully it's not going to be too far down the road. We are definitely thinking in terms of weeks rather than in months. So there you go. Yeah.
And I think one thing to stress about the FPS is this is not a case of us just deciding, we also want to make Call of Duty. This is core technology that is important to everything we're doing going forward.
Yeah. No, as I said, the biggest holdup really is that sort of first and third person unification, and the decision for that is mainly not anything to do with the first person shooter, because if it was just a first person shooter, we wouldn't need it. It's really to do with the persistent universe. and what's happening in the persistent universe, and you flying in multi-crew ships and everything. So I hate having unnecessary work done. So I hate having parallel systems and two stuff. So I'd rather just do one right than do two different things. And get something out sooner, because I think long term it doesn't help you. You waste money, you spend time on something that you're going to have to refactor anyway. So in some cases, I think that's even though it's frustrating, it's a better way to look after everyone's money by not having us do work that we will then have to redo when we're like, oh, well, now in the persistent universe, we need to do this. Or our multi-crew vehicles, we've got all sorts of issues with players looking wonky when they're sitting in the cockpits or interacting with stuff. It's foundational for the OVE game. So if we were just shipping an FPS game, we could have pretty much taken a lot of the Crysis stuff straight out of the engine and gone with that. It would have made our lives a lot easier. It's because we've gone this unification route, which, by the way, just to let you know, everyone at Crytek has, they've talked about doing this. They talked about doing it on Crysis 2. They talked about doing it on Crysis 3. And at the end, they sort of gave up because they had deadlines and, there were some issues that dealt with. Now, we've made more progress than they did when they were trying it for Crysis 2 and Crysis 3. But, we're still dealing with some of the same issues. But I'm determined that we're going to get them cracked. I feel like we can. I can sort of see it there. So, you don't see this a lot because it's really hard to do.
All right, next question. This is the first time backers have seen your face in a little while because of the shoot. A lot of people have asked, how have you stayed in contact with the team?
Well, luckily in today's world, we have a very distributed development setup. We have 4 internal studios, all in different time zones. So we got Austin, Texas, we got Winslow in the UK, and we've got Frankfurt in Germany, and then we've got Ilphonic in Denver, Behavior in Montreal, Turbulent in Montreal, and then we've also got individual contractors. So we're already built to be a distributed development sort of centric company. We share, everything's online for us, like whether it's Jira, or, our Confluence, or it's Shotgun that we use to sort of pass back and forth our sort of art and image development. All our, Perforce stuff is, we share between the studios, and we've got special 1 gigabyte backbones between it. And so when I went to shoot in Ealing, we set up for me that I had like very high speed connections, and essentially I shot, with the shooting days were from 8 to 6 p.m. and then after that I would come back and then it would be video conferences with the UK and Germany, here over in the US. And luckily in that time frame it works because the US is obviously behind where the UK is, and lots of emails, lots of comments online on our various sort of online collaboration stuff. So pretty much my entire waking time for the shoot and the weekends was spent dealing with either directing the shoot or managing the project. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I didn't do that much community stuff, because I was just kind of swamped. I essentially was, it was like 16, 17 hour days for me. And then, but I felt, we got a big project and, it has to go through, and I'm sort of the central director of it. So I can't just check out for 3 months. And, I think if you talk to people around here, they will attest that, they would wake up in the morning in the US and there'd be lots of emails from me about various things or comments on Shotgun and stuff like that. So, I was very much sort of present and involved. We also brought some people down to the shoot to sort of them together. A lot of the UK guys came down. We brought some of the US folks over too. That was a full-time thing. But that's because I'm committed. I want to get this thing done, and it's got to be done right. So if you don't roll your sleeves and do it, no one else is going to do it.
I can certainly speak to that. The emails, I would wake up every morning and there's Chris everywhere. So,
I'm a habitual emailer. So I'm luckily a speed reader, and I'm pretty quick on stuff. So I haven't really counted my email count, but I'm sure my email count's 500 to 1,000 a day. I read. I never pretty much get through all my emails every single day, no matter what.
I actually asked, I went to Outlook and I tried to search for Chris Roberts past 3 months to see how many emails, and it broke the search when I tried. So, yeah. All right, next topic. While you were away, there was a leak of some content, not pointing any fingers, but backers have gone through the leak and they've said, okay, why is there content in here we haven't seen yet? How does that square with our definition of open development?
There's a couple. There's a couple of reasons. One, the obvious one on Squadron 42, which I mentioned when we were talking about Squadron 42, is the fact that it's a narrative story that we want you to sort of experience. And if you see every aspect of it, every part of it, or every location, or every ship that you're going to see, the whole sense of discovery won't be there, and so it'll really hurt the experience. So we definitely want to keep a lid on the Squadron 42 aspects that I think are behooven to be part of the story. I mean, some of it, like general, okay, here's what a Vandal looks like, that's fine. But a lot of the specific locations or the specific characters, or even some of the ships you'll be on or flying or coming up against, we kind of wanted to sort of keep as a great discovery and surprise. Otherwise, you'll play the game and you'll be, oh, I've seen this before. I mean, I still think it's going to be a great game, but from a narrative standpoint, it sort of feels like you need to have a sense of discovery. So that's one of the big reasons. The other reason is, we have a lot of stuff that's sort of in development, and there are certain periods that we sort of feel comfortable. It's sort of what I was talking about with Star Marine, is just because a programmer finishes writing something, doesn't mean we instantly put it out there. We've got to test it, we've got to polish it. The same for some of the art stuff that people do is, we've got to refine it and do stuff. And then when we think, okay, well, this thing is in a good enough state, it's not finished yet, but it's a good enough state to get outside objective feedback, let's get it out there and see what people think and do stuff with. So that's actually that's a big point for us. And I will tell you that, programmers and artists here, it's always a constant fight, because everyone, they want their stuff to be perfect. So they're all like, I don't want to say, even when we share stuff, they're like, it's not ready yet, it's not finished yet. So it's always a fight, and we can't share stuff too early, because it's pretty stressful for an artist if you share something early that he knows there's 20 problems with, and then every backer gets on a forum concern thread and points out those same 20 problems. It's kind of the same, like I said, with Star Marine on a bigger scale. That's one of the reasons why we're not sharing the build that we have right now, which we play test on every week. For those reasons, is that we sort of feel like there's points where are useful to share, where the discussion will take it in places that it will involve things that we need that input on. So if we know that the shaders are broken and we know the colors off, or the shape is not correct to how it should be, we already know that. We don't. It's not helping out, and it's not going to help out the morale of the artist or the programmer that has this broken feature. So we sort of try to have these gates where, internally develop, we get it where we like it, and then we pass it over to QA, and then QA sort of gives us their feedback, and then we pass it over to you guys, and you guys give us their feedback, then we take that back and we work on it, and we sort of feels like a really positive iteration cycle. And of course, we're sharing with you well before we would ever share it if it was a sort of final publisher game. So I think you guys get a view of it much sooner than you would have normally done. But like I said, we're not going to share everything from day one for the reasons I've given. And so I hope that's a suitable answer.
I think that makes sense. So you kind of have to. The work has to speak to the vision rather than being something we're not happy with yet.
Yeah, you don't want to show work just to show work, right? You want to show work that says, hey, look, we've taken it this far and we would love your feedback. It's the same thing as, I'm sure there's people out there, they have their own projects and they work on their own projects. And I doubt that anyone's working on their own project shows their project the instant they start it to all their friends. It's like, okay, they get it to a certain point. It's like, I see, some cool stuff when, on our forums, people are doing 3D printing of ships or putting stuff together, or people are sharing 3D models they're doing. Well, they're not saying, here, look, here's the screenshot of Max I've just put up, and here's the square. It's going to become a really cool looking spaceship. Usually they're sharing it once they've got it to a certain point and they want some feedback. And we sort of have that same approach.
Well, next topic is, I think, the current most active thread on the forums, which is controller balance. Can you give your...
that feels like one of those battles. It feels like Waterloo, really, doesn't it? And I hope I'll be Wellington, not Napoleon. But anyway, so controller balance is just always going to be a complete ongoing thing. It's something we're very aware of. I've stated from the beginning that we want to have the game be controller agnostic. So I do not want there to be some super class of user that because of their controller they can be better or beat everyone else. And we do have an inherent problem in controllers in that some, different control interfaces are good for different things. So joysticks or say a HOTAS is much better for flying precisely than say a mouse. But a mouse, if you're using a gimbaled weapon, is better for precise aiming. So the reason why, people with keyboard and mouse on a PC can school anyone using a gamepad in an FPS shooter. And so they have different strengths, and I think that the right answer in this is to allow complete option, that whoever the player can have whatever they want, and to make sure that the strengths of one thing are countered by a con on another one. So it's like, yes, you have some, you have aiming that is better for you if you've got a mouse, if you've got gimbal weapons, but if your flying's not so good, but if you've got a joystick and your flying gives you an advantage that you could use over someone with a mouse. And we haven't got that balance properly yet, so that needs to be we've been working on stuff. The new 1.15 patch that's going to come out, we've still been playing around with some of the stuff. One of the big things is, we had announced a while back was that gimbaled weapons. Well, the gimbal itself takes up a size class, and so you've got to drop down a size for a weapon. Well, the problem in the past was, and I think people on the forums had done this. The size 1 weapon damage output compared to the size 2 weapon damage output, there was maybe a 20 or 30% increase between size 1 and size 2. Well, that doesn't make much sense, right? Ostensibly it should be closer to say twice as much or something like that, and then. And I'm not saying it's twice as much, but if you get my drift, then you have a real sort of pro and con there, because you go, okay, the guy that's flying with a joystick has he'll probably want to go towards fixed weapons, so that's more difficult to put on target, but when he does, he's doing twice as much damage as opposed to the guy with the mouse. It's easier to put on target, but he's doing half the amount of damage, and then you've got other things that bigger the gun gets on a gimbal, maybe the slower the gimbal reacts and all the rest of the stuff. So those are all things we're actively wanting and trying to balance. It's the biggest problem is we've got so many things going on, and we also have other considerations, because right now you're just playing Arena Commander with single-seater ships and dogfighting, and the full game persistent universe is not going to be all about that. I mean, it's really going to be, I think multi-crew ships are going to be one of the big things. I can see a lot of people flying bigger ships with either NPCs or friends with them on the ships. And there's going to be a whole variety of different kinds of piloting styles, because obviously you can't take a constellation and dogfight the same way you can dogfight in a Hornet, but then other things in a constellation you're going to have advantages on. And then there's also things like, right now in Arena Commander, it's sort of that respawn mechanic. So people fire a bunch of missiles and then they, kill themselves so they can fire some more missiles. And well, that's not going to happen in the real game. I mean, there's no way. First of all, you're not going to want to kill yourself because that's a pain in the ass. Second of all, missiles are going to cost credits that you're going to have to earn, so you're just not going to spam them like that. So there are certain play styles right now that happen in Arena Commander that won't happen in the final game, that in some ways can give you an impression that one controller or another controller has an advantage. And we're active, we want to address them in Arena Commander. We want to make Arena Commander by itself a fun experience for everybody using the controllers, and each one having pros and cons. But also be aware that there's a lot of other considerations that we were only coming into. So in some ways, we don't want to sort of be definitive and say this is what it is like this early, because we've got to get the big multi-crew ships in and a bit more variety happening before we have a really good sense of the full picture and figure out how best to give each controller its own pro and con and make them sort of feel equal. And that's not to say that we don't experiment and play around with stuff. And I think one of the problems is that we sort of held off doing an Arena Commander patch because we thought FPS was going to be sooner, so we haven't really patched anything on Arena Commander for quite a few months. And that was our sort of balance iteration. So 1.15 has some balance iteration stuff in that hopefully will make this a little better. Maybe it won't, I don't know. There could be some new thread popping up, whether it's Mouse Commander or Missile Commander or one of the other ones that's happened, a Minsky Commander, Sledge Commander, I don't know. But that's just the process of balancing. So I've made a real sort of commitment now and focus on the team to say, look, no matter what, we're sort of busy trying to get things out like multi-crew or get FPS out or get Squadron 42 out, we can't not be constantly iterating on Arena Commander and trying to improve that and balancing that and going on and taking people's feedback. Because I think that's one of, if I go and take a look at, being away and I come back and, it sort of feels like there wasn't really a lot of new things to play with. So at some point, everyone kind of gets bored. It becomes more about arguing about things than actually playing stuff. So we're trying to get back onto the content and the delivering and taking people's feedback and adjusting and be patient with us. We're going to, we're committed to make it a fun experience for all. It is, I will say that, for all means, beginners playing the game, have it fun. Then there's detail and depth that like more experienced people can get into, and you sort of grow with it. So my goal, and this is something that everyone's so easy to play but hard to master. It's a cliche in the game business. I think it was first, maybe coined by some Trip Hawkins or someone at EA, but which may not necessarily be the best. But it is a very true mantra of what will make a good game, and so we are focused on that. So don't worry, the way the controllers aren't the way they're going to continue to be, and our sort of plan is not to gimp things, but to really try to make things have their own pros and cons that they sort of own. And it'll take a time to get there, and we need your feedback for that. So there you are on controllers.
So kind of speaking directly to the controller balance thread, you would say that the vision is that gimbals are here to stay, but we want to balance them in such a way that folks who are more skilled with a joystick have an advantage over someone using a mouse.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, yeah, I mean, on the gimbal basis, I mean, I can't see any version of the future that you wouldn't have some level of your weapons gimbal. I mean, even if we like our, let's go to fantasy future like Star Wars and stuff. I mean, there's guns on turrets and all the rest of the stuff. But there needs to be a con to that is, the pro on someone that's flying there. They didn't, Luke and his X-wing didn't have gimbaled weapons, and he seemed to be doing pretty good. And other
had a
things
magic force.
Yeah, the Millennium Falcon had its little turret on it. So obviously gimbals and turrets for say multi-crew vehicles are going to be super useful because they won't have the maneuverability that a single-seater fighter was. But we certainly don't want it to be that someone with a gimbal gets all the benefits and none of the downside of it. And so that's kind of the goal. And we will make we're committed to making that as sort of balanced as possible. And I would say that in general, probably you would see more turreted or gimbaled stuff on bigger ships to make up for their maneuverability. And the smaller ships, we're going to try and balance it in such a way that yes, you could put a gimbal on it, but then you're really sort of kind of nerfing your ability to do damage. But that's a whole bunch. We've got all this tweaking for power and distribution of that and the shields, and there's a whole bunch of. We've only started to really scratch the surface of that, and then the physical based damage will also help a lot with the balancing. There's it's early days, and don't worry. Ultimately, with your help, I think we'll have something that maybe not everybody's 100% happy with, but I think it will be good enough for everyone to go, yeah, okay, cool, and I don't feel like I'm unfairly sort of hamstrung.
Now, we've had several staff departures recently. What's going on there? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, I think it's just a natural thing. So we have a very big company now. We have 255 people between our 4 studios. These are the in-house people. And you just get turnover when you get to that side. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why people leave. Sometimes they get an offer they couldn't refuse, or they get to do that was their dream. Because as hard as it may seem, most people here, what we're building is their dream. But in some cases, like Travis, for as long as I've known him, I've known since he's been very young, because Mark Day, his father, worked with me on the Wing Commanders. He's been a complete World of Warcraft nut, and when he wasn't working on our stuff, he would be running his World of Warcraft character around, and when we've had people join from Blizzard, he'd be asking them about World of Warcraft. That's been his dream, and so you can't really sort of stop in the way of that. But generally, on a turnover basis, it's been no different here than it's been when I was at Origin, and we've grown to the size we are now. Because Origin went from, I was there at I think there was like 5 or 6 of us at the very beginning in Austin, and we grew to 110 when EA bought us, and then it was about 300 or so when I left. And at some point, as it got bigger, it's like I didn't even know half the people, and people were coming and going, and that kind of happens. And so it's unfortunate. Sometimes it's for personal reasons, but we've got a really great group of people here and a really great infrastructure, and I do think that in some ways people see it more than they would normally, because at a publisher or whatever, maybe you'll see the very front person on a project, but you're not going to see the whole staff. But we tend to share our whole staff here, and then on top of that, because community and video is here in LA, we tend to show the folks here in LA more than we would say show the folks in Austin, or more than we show the folks in the UK, or more than we show the folks in Germany. And we still try to highlight them, but it's just easier because you can just walk next door with a camera and shoot stuff. And so sometimes you're seeing someone give information about a certain feature or what we're doing, and you may think, oh, well, that person's they're driving it. Well, they're involved in it, but there's 10 other people that are working on the feature with them, and you just don't see them. And so, I think that it's part of the downside of being as open as we are. You just sort of will have more exposure to the regular comings and goings in operating a big, large development studio. I mean, it's what happens. The bigger the group of people, the more there'll be different personalities, there will be different wants and agendas. I mean, it's the same thing as we've grown from a small number of backers to an insanely huge number of backers. You just have more different voices and agendas and all the rest of the stuff that comes on, and sometimes people want to go somewhere else, or it's not with them. I mean, I have to say that to work on Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you have to be of a certain mindset, because it's hard. It's much harder than protected development and a publisher. Where you're shielded from everything. So here, when things are late and people are venting their frustrations or complaining that something's broken, you're venting your frustration, complaining something's broken, but there's a developer on the other side that's going, oh man, they don't like my work, or they think my art looks crap, and that's kind of hard for people. And there's a pace, because there's an incessant demand to deliver stuff all the time, and so you need to be ready for that. I mean, if you listen to people that are work on big MMOs, we're talking about World of Warcraft, but having a game that's live and people are playing and giving you feedback and also trying to develop at the same time is a very high degree of difficulty. And so the pace of that sometimes can be more than people are used to. So if we have someone that comes here from somewhere where they used to spend 7 years before anyone saw the game, and all of a sudden they're working on something after a month and showing it to people, it can be a little disconcerting. Some people really like that. It really gives energy to people. I think it's great. I like the energy of it. Most of the people here do. But we'll occasionally have people that come in that just that pace is too much for them, and like I said, we'll have people that have an offer they can't refuse somewhere else, and that just naturally kind of happens. So I don't think there is any particular sky is falling. In the case of Alex, it was really sad to see him go, but he left for personal reasons, and we took the opportunity to use that to streamline our production around the company. So Aaron, who's my brother, who you guys know, that worked with me since Wing Commander 1 and pretty much most of my space games, and at Origin and Electronic Arts and then Digital Anvil, and for the last 7 years before he joined us again, he was at Traveler's Tales, and his studio, Traveler's Tales Fusion, they built up from I think 6 people to 200 odd people, and delivered a whole bunch of the Lego games that have had great critical acclaim and sold really well, and they were a machine. They were delivering these, as you can see the Lego games consistently, and he's great. Actually, when I first started, I actually talked to him by having the global production role originally, but he wanted to focus on building up Foundry 42. But now it's 115 people. It's our biggest studio. We've got Foundry 42 over in Germany, and so he's agreed to become the global manager of production, which was originally what I wanted him to be. And it's kind of nice, because now we're going to centralize and unify our production techniques, because the US was running a slightly different version of how we were running our production techniques to how we were doing in the UK and Germany. And so we've taken the opportunity to unify it under one person and go from there. And I think it's going to be better. I mean, he's great. I mean, there isn't anyone that I've worked with that's a better producer and production person than Aaron, and he's also my brother, so he can say things to me that maybe some other people wouldn't say to me, which is good. I'm sad to see Alex go, but I'm very happy to have Aaron here, and I think anyone that knows space games and the history of what he's done and what I've done would know that this is kind of like what you really is the best thing for the project.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been following space games for a long time, and it certainly always seems like Aaron is sort of your finisher. He comes in and he gets things done.
No, he's very good at he's very good at pulling people together, getting them finished, cutting through the bullshit, holding people accountable. I think I definitely see on the forums as people are impressed by the stuff they see coming out of the UK, and part of that is because of Aaron. So no, I'm trust me, I'm super happy.
It's also funny you mentioned Travis as a kid visiting you at Origin, because Mark used to then put Travis on the computer where he would chat online with teenage Ben.
Yeah.
I would beg him for Wing Commander information. That was small world. So backers have pledged for a number of ships over the past 2.5 years or so, some of them which are already in Arena Commander, and others which some people think, oh, have they forgotten about the Caterpillar? Have they forgotten about the Banu Merchantman? What is the process behind the screens?
Well, so part of the issue with our ships is they're incredibly detailed and incredibly complicated. So just seeing the concept at first, which we actually spend a lot of time on building the 3D sort of conceptual model and figuring it out with design, is only just it's sort of the tip of the iceberg. So when it gets down to actually sort of modeling it and putting an engine, there's a huge amount of work and iteration that goes between the artists and the designers and the animators to get all the features working, to make them functional inside, to make the spaces work, to make the various parts of the ship, like landing gear, fold up into the right place, or to make the sleeping quarters work. And so they take a long time, especially the bigger ships take a long time. So to give you an example, Chris Smith and Josh Coons have been working on the rebuild of the Constellation, and the Constellation itself, we've already had out, and we're sort of updating it to our most recent modeling techniques, which are more efficient for rendering and actually provide greater detail. And those themselves, that redesign's been about 6 months with Josh and Chris, are two of our best sort of hard surface vehicle and modelers. So it takes time. Nathan Disley, who's one of our, he's our principal sort of vehicle artist. He, took about 8 months sort of prototyping everything for the Retaliator, developing techniques that we would use that would, enhance the quality, but say reduce the draw calls and a few other things because we have performance issues that we also have to take care of. So it just takes time. We found it's too complicated to outsource these things because there's a lot of back and forth between various people on the project, the designers, the animators. So we have about 14 people on staff that are dedicated vehicle artists, which is not a small number. We're looking to hire more, by the way. So if there's any of you guys out there as hard service modelers, let us know. And so with that number of resources, the amount of time, especially the bigger ships take, you have to have some level of priority. And so for us, Squadron 42 is one of the sort of, it's definitely going to be there before the full PU. So, Squadron 42 in some ways has been taking priority. We've got a lot of ships to build there, the Vandal ships, the UE naval ships, and then some other sort of, auxiliary ships like, Starfarer, Herald, the Cutlass, are all part of the Squadron 42 game. And so they're kind of on the schedule, and they've sort of been getting some of the attention and love. And some of those are really big ships, like the Idris, the Bengal. They're huge ships, and so for those, they take a long time. And there's a team, I think, on the Idris. There's like 5 or 6 people working on it right now. So it just takes time, but we're trying to come up with a good schedule. I think we just put something on the forums that sort of shows where we're at on the ships. And don't worry, as far as the ships that we're building, we're not forgetting about them. We're going to get them done, and sometimes the priorities move around based on sort of Squadron 42 or what we need for the persistent universe. We're going to get them all done, and we are feathering in persistent universe, Star Citizen 1. So for us, some of the ships that involve other kinds of gameplay are actually quite important because we want to try and get them in sooner so we can sort of iterate and experiment with gameplay in future versions of Arena Commander that may not just be about combat, will be about things like mining and stuff like that.
Cargo and all
cargo
that,
hauling. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, so with longer, when we get the multi-crew stuff, like we'll definitely look at prototyping game modes in Arena Commander that ultimately will be the sort of things that would happen in the persistent universe. Like, okay, someone flies a big cargo hauler, and you've got a couple of people that are flying escort, and then the other team are pirates, and they've going to try and stop the shipment getting to its destination and rip off the shipment. And so we're going to start creating scenarios that are closer to persistent universe scenarios to sort of prototype that kind of gameplay and see how it works. And that's sort of the longer term plan of Arena Commander once multi-crew hits. And so we'll definitely be having some of those ships on the schedule too, but we're going to try to sort of keep everyone up to date with where the ships are in terms of where they sit on the schedule and when they're going to sort of move into in-game modeling or into the hangar or into flight. So, if you pledge for a ship, hopefully, longer term, right now we're sort of doing it on the forums in sort of an ad hoc manner, but longer term you should be able to go and see the status of the ship you've pledged for on your web platform.
And speaking of ships, can you speak to one question that came up after the Starliner went out? Why do we continue to offer concept sales?
Okay, well, we offer concept sales for a couple of reasons. One, you guys like them and ask for them. So I constantly see threads popping up about, what about this next one? When am I going to see this one? For us, obviously it's a good way to continue to raise funds for the game because it's a big endeavor. We have a lot of people working, and the more money that we bring in means the sort of bigger, richer experience we can do from the start. It also means we can invest more in sort of the online cloud stuff earlier. We've been delivering a lot of data to people. We're trying to optimize it, but that data costs money, and we've been delivering petabytes, and so it's essentially much bigger than we estimated at the beginning because everyone downloads all these patches, and that's cool. But things like concept sales help support that and also support the general development effort. And then the final thing, which is more sort of a creative thing, is I really want to seed the universe with all these different roles and ships. So, because one of the things that struck me when I first started Star Citizen and looking and reading what people on the forums, just listening to what people were sort of talking about what they wanted to do in this universe and the kind of roles they wanted to do, it sort of was creatively pretty inspiring because you're like, wow, okay, and everyone wants to just shoot each other, and they want to do all these different kind of things. And so you've got people that just want to have a mining corporation, or just want to build a huge merchant empire, or shuttle passengers around the universe, or just go and rescue people, or take them onto a hospital ship and fix them up. I mean, it's really great. And so for me, I kind of want to seed this universe with these different ships that have these different kind of roles, and I definitely want to put them in the hands of players because I don't want every single player to start the game with an Aurora because it's going to just feel weird and boring. And so just like real life outside, there's lots of people with different whatever you want. Let's talk about cars, different cars. So, the Aurora is a Ford Fiesta, and, there's different rates up there. And some people like their pickup trucks, and some people like their sports cars, and some people like their RVs, and people sometimes like their sailing boats, and so I kind of want that same range in the universe. So when we start, there are people that are flying around in mining ships. There's people hauling cargo. There's people bringing passengers around. There's people picking up people in space. There's people repairing ships out in space. There's people will be mercenaries. People will be bounty hunters. And so we'll have all these sort of specialized roles. And the concept sales, are all different roles for gameplay reasons, and putting them in the hands of players is much better than putting them in the hands of AI. We'll definitely have AI running around, but players do the most interesting thing, and that's one of our tenets of the Final Persistent Universe, is to enable it so the sort of players themselves sort of drive a lot of the kind of drama and the action of the universe. And to do that, you sort of have to make a diverse range of them. You don't want everyone to start exactly the same point or level or have exactly the same ship. You sort of want them to sort of go after different roles. So we're giving them the opportunity to sort of sign up to a role early while also supporting the development of the game. So for me, it sort of feels like it's a win-win. So that's kind of why we do it.
So I can see the next concern thread already from the Aurora pilots who have had their ship compared to a Ford Fiesta.
Well, there's nothing wrong with Ford Fiesta. It gets you from point A to point B.
How does it deal with
and the new
dual?
ones are pretty good. Well, they got like all this Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and stuff. But I mean, Aurora isn't meant to mean like if you played the original Privateer, your starting ship isn't the best ship you're going to fly, and the same on wing commanders and stuff like that.
I love my Tarsus. All right, here's a big one.
Okay.
How has the scope of Star Citizen changed since we launched the project back in 2012?
Well, I mean, it's changed quite a lot. I mean, we started with when I originally started, I showed the demo and I sort of pitched what I wanted to do with Star Citizen. I didn't think that we would have nearly the amount of support that we've had. I mean, I thought that I would raise hopefully between $2 and $4 million, and then I had some private investors lined up to invest another 10 or so, and then I would work hard to sort of get a sort of smaller, much less ambitious alpha together, and then once that's out there and people like that and they're contributing money to buy the game, I could use the money to build the game up into the big universe that I always wanted to build. We'd set these stretch goals out as we started our campaign, and we smashed every single one that we set in the initial campaign. And then we, continued to sort of talk about features that we thought would be good, we would like, and the community continued to fund them. And we obviously have done an amazing, amount of support and funding with the $85 million that we're at, and it sort of allows to build a much bigger, more full-featured, ambitious game that I think is, it's definitely my full dream game, and I think it's the game that a lot of people here in Cloud Imperium and everyone out there backing is the game that they have dreamed of playing. And so, on a certain level, it sort of feels unanimously to me that everyone's gone, hey, I want this game and I want it great, and I don't want, I've been waiting 10 years for a decent space game and I want you to build it, and I'm going to give you the money to build it right, not build it half-assed, just build it properly, build it in a way that will last for a long time and we can spend a lot of time playing in this game. And so in that context, the scope's changed a lot. I mean, the original campaign, minimum amount that we were promising was increased web communication. Well, you get so much on our web now, it's crazy. We have, all these video shows, all the posts. I mean, we post more times than there are days in the week. And then, the other thing we said was, you'll be part of the sort of multiplayer alpha dogfight. Well, we've got Arena Commander right now, and we're continuing to iterate and improve that and make it better. And then the last promise was sort of a much smaller version of what Squadron 42 is being now, and that was it. It wasn't even the persistent universe was a stretch goal when we first started, and we sort of hit all these goals, and the game's in terms of what it's going to be has definitely gotten bigger, and so naturally that presents a bit of a problem, because of course when you're doing more things, it's going to take more time. Even if you have more money, just hiring up the people to do it all, take it all that. I mean, I truly think that the end result is something that people are all going to be happy with, and that's what people want. But the sort of pro and con of it is, but what about all these people at the very beginning that said, hey, you're going to give me the game in 2 years? Well, we can't give you this in 2 years, but originally the promise was for this. So that's one of the reasons why we went this whole route of having, originally we were just saying, well, I'll give you a multiplayer alpha for the dogfighting, and then we'll give you Squadron 42 when it's sort of in beta. And we said, no, you know what? This thing is obviously going to take longer to build than it would have done in a more sort of smaller, less ambitious version. So how can we find a way that the players can be playing it as we go along and seeing features and giving input and making the game itself better, so they get something in the short term and they also get this bigger thing at the end. And so that was one of the big drivers of us switching our development philosophy around, because originally we weren't talking about the hangar module, the FPS module, the social module, any of those features. And so now we've sort of we've sort of focused our development in a way that we can sort of deliver a lot of this gameplay, and you can be experiencing it, and then we're building it around you, and it's going to get better, and your feedback will make it better. So you'll get to do things in the short term, but you get a much bigger game than you'd ever could have. Like if you back this on October 10th, you weren't expecting anything of the level that we're doing now. You couldn't have done, because there's no way it could have been delivered for that amount of, for what we were saying, we needed the minimum of $2 million that would have been aided by the private investment. But people came and said, no, we want it bigger. And actually we, stretch goal after stretch goal. I mean, we ultimately decided, even those stretch goals keep pushing revenue and bring people in and gets people excited. At 65 million, we just sort of said, look, we've done this a lot. We've got like a huge amount of stuff to get done. So at the end of last year, we said, nope, we're going to do a moratorium on it, and we're going to focus on getting this finished out. And the money that's coming in now is going to be focused on making this what we promised now, as good as possible, as rich as possible, as polished as possible, and that's sort of my answer. My answer is basically, yes, it's increased in scope, but I think it's what everyone wants. Everyone wants this game. They don't want something that's sort of a small, pale version of what we're building right now. I've definitely seen games that go out there and, they have plans to put all this extra stuff in there, but people are complaining like, oh, there isn't enough gameplay, or I don't get to do much, I'm bored right now. And so we don't want to be in that position. It's one of the reasons why we're sort of trying to build the bigger universe right from the get-go, and people have sort of supported us and said, yes, that's what we want you to do. And so I think it's my job to give them the big dream, but also at the same time give people parts of it to play as we go along. And I think that's ultimately what I'm hoping people like. I mean, it's definitely the best answer, I think, because the ultimate game that was going to get built is, it's a game that I think most people would have thought could never happen.
I mean, and it seems like that's really the benefit, the reason to go with crowdfunding. You know, if you were doing this game for a publisher, EA would tell you, no, ship it now, ship the much smaller vision. Going this way, it's the whole point.
Yeah, well, and I think it's, and I've said before, it's like the community sets the ambition, right? So the community says, okay, no, we want you to make something really big and bold, and they've funded us to be able to do that, and it's with their support. I've said before that we sort of scale what we're doing in our development based on the money that we bring in, because we operate very much like, we're not like a normal box game where you just, everyone works on it and then we give it to you when it's finished. I mean, we are sharing it as we're going along. So we're really operating a live game, which at the moment is the Hangar and Arena Commander, but very soon will also be Star Marine, and not long after that will be the Arena Commander multi-crew plus Persistent Universe, like social stuff. And that's live, that people are playing and we're iterating on and trying to improve their experience and take their feedback, while we're also doing work and R&D towards the bigger thing with all the, more of the game systems and more of the content and everything else. And I think that's the best solution, because you can't think of Star Citizen like you would think of a normal game, right? You can't think of it like, oh, well, here you are, here's your, whatever it is, $10, go make your game and come back to me when it's done in 2 years, because we're not operating that way. Our backers aren't. I mean, there's a level of interaction that's happening with the game that, I've seen almost nowhere else. Even on other crowdfunding games, I've supported a lot of them, but the amount of updates and stuff, yes, there's definitely updates, but in terms of interaction, playing builds, doing all the stuff, the amount of effort that's going into that, isn't to the level that we're doing it. It's not necessarily to knock them. I mean, we've obviously been lucky enough to raise a lot more money and have more, basically a much bigger staff, so it allows us to do that level of interaction. But I think that's key to the experience. It's like, I think if you look at Star Citizen through the prism of the old world, it's going to seem weird to you and seem foreign, and it's not right. Something's not right with that. But in the prism of the new world, I think it is the kind of, I think that's what I think the new kind of game, especially the new kind of online game, is this game that you engage your community much earlier, and they get involved much earlier. They give you the feedback much earlier, while you're continuing to build it and try and make something that's a bigger, more full-featured game and dream. And so yes, the scope has changed. It's changed because you guys said you wanted to change. I'm happy you did, because I think what we're building now is going to be something, when it's all said and done, everyone look back on it and say, wow, okay, we did this together and no one else could have done that. No publisher would have done this. We did this together. And so all I would say is to all you guys out there, it's going to be worth it to stay the course, because I'm not giving up on this thing until it's done and finished properly. And I feel very lucky to be in the situation that I am right now.
Certainly on a community side, we definitely feel that our charge is to give people enough content that they feel that was worth the ticket price. Your $45 got you an entire development cycle of videos and interaction and drama and all that. So.
Well, no, I say it a lot. Because the vast majority of our backers have, contributed like $40. So yes, we definitely have some, people that have contributed a lot more than that, and thank you so much for doing that. But the vast majority of it only contributed $40, and those people, and the amount of game they're going to get, it's the best deal in the world. I mean, they're getting Squadron 42 is by itself stand up to any other AAA single player game, and then you're going to have this persistent universe, and you're not going to have a subscription fee that you need for that. You can just play in the universe and earn the ships, and we're not. You have that, and you got the first person combat aspects. You've got the trading aspects. I mean, it's like 3 or 4 games all rolled into one. I really sort of feel that there's a lot of value that comes with it in the long run, and people hopefully will think, hey, you know what? I had a great time. Watching this thing evolve and give feedback and do it, and kept me entertained for years. And the game's out now, and it's so amazing with all these features. And this is just like gravy. And so that's my goal. My goal is to make the journey as enjoyable as the final product, that they feel like the final product is the bonus, basically, and they help get us to that bonus. So I sort of feel like this game definitely gets made better by everybody pulling together as a community. All the feedback, even if there's feedback that I don't agree with, or maybe other people here don't agree with, all the feedback's valid because it helps us make a better game. It forces us to challenges our ideas, makes us decide whether something should be changed or shouldn't be changed. You need that level of feedback and agitation to really craft something that's strong and can last for the ages. So I don't think we could be building Star Citizen under the traditional publisher model at all. They wouldn't let us have this level of interaction. I think we need this level of interaction to build a world like we're building. And I definitely know a publisher would never have invested this kind of money into a PC-only game at this point. So thank you, guys.
Now, there are some claims that Star Citizen is too big, that it's an impossible project to complete. What's your response to that?
I don't think it's impossible at all. I think it's very doable. I think maybe some people that claim that don't have enough of imagination or don't have enough of the technical ability to do it. I mean, I know that in all the features that we've talked about in terms of the large persistent universe, how we're going to move between it, how we're going to transition from planets to space, move in and out of these big ships into smaller ships, and everything be seamless. We've got the fundamental, technology pretty much cracked. I mean, we're going to go to Gamescom, which is in a few weeks, and we'll sort of show the next iteration. We're going to show the first large world map, this is only just a small corner of possibility of it, and it's the gas giant you're orbiting around is 182,000 kilometers in diameter, and I think we have 3 moons, maybe 4 moons, and if you just flew between them at top speed in like the fastest ship, it would be about 2.5 hours at the moment. Of course, we're going to have the sort of a quantum drive quick jump to get between some of the stuff, but it's all in the same area, same level. There's no loading screens. We've been actively working on not just the large world, which is sort of this much bigger precision for much larger distances, because pretty much every 3D engine is a 32-bit engine, and then so it's fine for first person on foot, where maybe you've got 8 kilometers by 8 kilometers play area, but we've got millions of kilometers by millions of kilometers play area, and so we need a much higher level of precision. So we moved to 64-bit for all our sort of 3D positions, we've got that blended with something that we've called the zone system, which is the other bit of tech that's very different than most engines. So most engines, again, are built for first-person shooters or sort of close quarters, third-person cover shooters and stuff like that. And in those cases, you have a very constant density of information, like walls, objects, items, characters. And so in terms of sorting them, what you need to render, what you don't need to render, what you need to update, what you don't need to update, it's pretty simple and it's fairly straight ahead, and they use things like octrees and stuff like that. But we have a problem in space that we have these huge areas, and there could be nothing in it, because there can be nothing in space for hundreds of thousands of kilometers or even millions of kilometers, and then you can come up to pockets of a lot of data. So an asteroid field, or a big capital ship with 50 rooms inside it and 100 people on top and board it. So we have this zone system that's sort of like this dynamic container system that various levels of items, data, information is contained inside, and it can be done in a sort of Russian doll manner. So you can have a container inside a container, or a zone inside a zone inside a zone, and everything inside a zone is relative to the zone. So we can sort of have, say, there'll be a planet you can land on, and that could be one zone, and there could be a space station in orbit around that planet, and that itself, space station, will be a zone inside that planetary zone, and then inside the space station, each one of the rooms could be a zone. And it's a really great way of sorting through the data for rendering needs and for update needs and everything else in a way that can manage our the big challenge for Star Citizen is we have incredible fidelity. You can get right up to in first person as much as you can see in any game out there, but you also have incredible scale, and no one's really tackled that ever properly, and that's what we're doing. And we built the core stuff for that, and some background streaming stuff. So you're going to see some of the benefits of the streaming in the new 1.15 you have. It's very early stage, but you'll notice, first of all, we're going to have 16 players that you'll be able to dogfight with, which is double what we've had before. And you'll notice there'll be hardly any glitches once you're in the game when people are respawning and stuff, and that's because we're dynamically streaming and caching stuff in a way that we haven't been in the past, and we're continuing to work on that. So as you fly around, as you approach zones, you sort of stream the content of that zone in, and then it starts to decide that it's going to render it and update it, and that's going to allow us to have this sort of big seamless world, which is what everyone says, oh, you can't do. So we've had the best, one of the good reasons to have Frankfurt. Our studio we built there. We have people that have built this engine in the first place, and they've been instrumental in helping finish out some of this technology to allow us to do something that you haven't seen in a normal 3D engine. So I'm super excited. So on the technical side, I think we've got most of it there. The other big technical thing we're working to is the back end, and as you've seen, we're making progress. We're moving from 8 to 16 players. We're working on 32 players in the FPS side, and we're not stopping there. We're going to carry on pushing that, and also looking at things we can do in the cloud where we can maybe have multiple servers all sort of slave together, so they can maybe have a much larger number of players that they're all sort of simulating in tandem and communicating with clients, because our goal is to have quite a lot of players in play areas all playing together, whether they're in separate ships or crewing a ship together, all the rest of the stuff. And so those are some of the aspects that we're still working on, but there is nothing that we don't have a plan for, basically. And some of it may take longer to get properly worked out than we would like, but I see the roadmap. There is nothing along the roadmap that I go, that won't be doable. So really then it just comes down to the amount of time it takes to crack it. Sometimes things take a little longer to get polished out, like we're experienced with the FPS. Sometimes they don't. So on that level, pulling it all together, I can't look at you right now and say, well, here's an absolute ironclad date. Everything will be ready by this date. But I definitely know we're going to be there, and we'll be delivering it, and everyone along the way will be playing and seeing and all this stuff that will happen. And before they know it, they'll be having this game that they've dreamed of. And so, what do I say to people? Bullshit.
And speaking for your team, the challenge is why we're here. I think anybody who works on Star Citizen could go and get rich making Flappy Bird on iPhone, but we're here because it's big, because it's such a big deal.
Yeah, totally. No, and also I think it's just like we're doing stuff like the giddy faces of like the developers here, or getting some of the stuff with because we have the full zone system and the large world, and also the local grid stuff, which is the sort of local physics for each one of the different ships. So going, starting in a space station, walking into a Cutlass, and a whole bunch of people getting into the whole Cutlass, flying up, flying along, finding a Retaliator floating derelict, and then people are getting out the back of the Cutlass, EVAing across, getting inside the Retaliator, going on, powering it up, starting it up, flying away. That's everyone's dream. The people have been doing machinima videos about it, and we are going to be showing a version of that gameplay, and that will be real gameplay. And as Arena Commander 2.0 and onwards, we'll be using it. We're laying the foundations to build this incredible playground for people to sort of spend hopefully many years in the Star Citizen universe. So I'm excited, and all the developers here are that's what excites them. This is the game they've wanted to play too.
So let's end this by asking, what's next for Star Citizen?
So what's next? So I think we've talked about some of it. We're working hard on the FPS. We're also working hard on sort of our preview of multi-crew, which we're going to show at Gamescom, which will demonstrate the large world and some of the zone system and the local grid stuff, and transitioning between various ships and it all working correctly. So we're going to have that. That'll be hopefully a demo that people will appreciate. It certainly will show the potential and the scale and the scope of what will go, and people can start to sort of extrapolate from there. There'll be that. Soon after that, we'll hopefully have the FPS in people's hands live. Then beyond that, the next stage will be the multi-crew Arena Commander, which will be sometime after the FPS, not too long after the FPS, but maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks after the FPS. Then we're also going to start rolling out some of the persistent universe aspects. So Tony's been hard at work on a bunch of stuff that we'll start to sort of roll out. We may even roll out a little bit of it earlier on in some of the Arena Commander modules we drop, or some of the FPS stuff we drop. But our plan is to sort of feather that out over time. So we'll have some nice stuff to show also at CitizenCon on October 10th, where we will be sharing a few things that people will like. But I don't want to say too much yet, because let's leave some surprises down the road. But everyone right now is focused very, very hard on the immediate goals, which is FPS, and what we're going to show you at Gamescom, which is the multi-crew Arena Commander spaceship stuff.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to go through all this with me, and it's an honor to work on Star Citizen. Shake your hand.
No, you're welcome. Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much. I mean, it's been great, and I'm very happy that you decided to join this endeavor very early on, especially back when we had hardly anyone that was working on it. So, I remember in the early days where we had, just Ortwin and Sandy and yourself and Dave Haddock and Forrest was sort of our, one artist that we had working, and then we had help from a few other folks like Paul Rendell, but he was still actually, he was doing it in his spare time while he was, at Crytek, and Sean Tracy, who's, with us now. And it was a kind of small merry band at the very beginning that, from the initial campaign grew, more people, joined, like Eric later on and stuff like that, and we grew up and got bigger, and we've a few friends have gone along the way, but I think we've got an incredibly strong and talented team, and I'm really, really excited, and I can't get it all done soon enough, basically, is the problem. But don't worry, it's not for lack of trying.
It's been something watching it come together. So next week we will have a 10 for the Chairman with questions from subscribers. Post those to the subscriber forum, and Chris will be answering 10 of those.
Yes, and thank you by the way, I always say it on the normal 10 for the Chairman, thank you to the subscribers out there, because even though we weren't answering your questions this time, you guys make all this possible. So we basically use the subscription money that we get to create things like Jump Point and do these video programs and have a higher amount of sort of community and web interaction. So we've got some really cool stuff that's coming down the road on the website that I think a lot of it is for community stuff, and it's as a subscribers, you guys are helping make that happen. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Hey guys, thanks for watching 10 for the Chairman. If you guys would like to see more episodes, go here. If you guys would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel and always keep up to date with all our video content, go here. And if you guys would like to watch episodes of Around the Verse, go here please. And I will see you in the verse.